The dining room of the Cross estate had never felt so hollow. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the sound of my father's voice, once thunderous and commanding, now cracking through the speakerphone. No food had arrived. Around the long, linen-covered table, 20 relatives sat stiffly, plates barren, postures tense. The ornate golden centerpiece sat in the middle like a cool joke, a gleaming monument to a celebration that wasn't happening. Across the table, Aunt Carla lifted her gaze, her eyes darting as a weight of realization began to settle. Meanwhile, I was 300 miles away, leaning casually against the island in my Asheville apartment, sipping hard cider. I brought the phone to my lips. "Oh," I said evenly, "I assumed you wouldn't be needing anything from me." A pause, a vacuum of silence, heavy, stunned, and loaded with confusion. Then came the murmurs. Through the speaker, my mother's voice floated in, faint and brittle. What does she mean by that? Panic mixed with uncertainty, twisting its way around the room like smoke. This was the same family that didn't want me there in person, but had no issue letting me foot the catering bill weeks ago. My name is Melanie Cross. I'm 38, the eldest daughter, the one who became the family's fixer, therapist, gopher, and ATM Thanksgiving. In our household was never about warmth or gratitude. It was theater, a glossy illusion of unity glossing over years of bias and buried resentment. Growing up in Raleigh, I wasn't treated like a daughter. I was treated like help. My younger siblings were doted on. I handled carpool runs, patched up scraped knees, and made sure everyone's homework was in on time. When I left for college, I thought maybe I'd finally earned a place at the grown-up table, as a peer, not a servant. I was wrong. The betrayal came 1 week before Thanksgiving 2024. Aunt Carla had sent a chipper message in the family group chat. "Can't wait to see everyone." I replied with a cheerful, "Same here, looking forward to it." Then, silence. Hours later, my cousin sent me a private message. "Wait, you're actually coming? Your parents told everyone you weren't invited this year." My stomach dropped. I called my mother in disbelief. She avoided the truth for a while before finally saying, "We're keeping it small this year, just immediate family." "I am immediate family," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Well, we just thought it would be easier this way. Less tension." Tension? There hadn't been any, unless she was referring to the time I declined to pay for my brother's car repairs, or when I refused to bail out my sister's wedding debt. For once, I checked. Everyone else had been invited. My siblings, their partners, even distant cousins I hadn't seen in years. But me? I was cut out, left behind, forgotten, except, of course, when the bill came due. They may have pushed me away from the table, but they had no problem enjoying the fruits of my generosity. I'd covered the entire Thanksgiving meal. Not just a contribution. I'd paid for everything. The turkey, the sides, the pies and the cakes. I'd placed the orders myself. From Maple and Pine, my mother's favorite boutique butcher, and from Sweet Laurel Bakery, where she swore their pumpkin cheesecake could outshine anything on the Food Network. All of it had been ordered under my name. They hadn't just excluded me. They'd used me. I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Maple and Pine. The refund was processed in minutes. The second was to Sweet Laurel. They hesitated until I forwarded them the receipt. Then they complied. After that, I waited. I knew precisely how this would unfold. Thanksgiving Day, 12:17 p.m. My phone buzzed. "Dad." I let the phone buzz 4 times before answering. "The food never showed up," my dad said. His voice cracked open between panic and disbelief. In the background, I could hear chaos building, confused voices, sharp whispers, my mother's tone rising like steam escaping a cracked lid. I tilted my head and added just the right edge of mock concern. Maybe check in with whoever placed the order." "You placed it," he snapped. "Did I?" I let the silence stretch, just long enough to let the sting settle in. "Well, I figured I wasn't really needed. You didn't exactly respond." An hour later, my cousin sent a text that painted the scene with perfect clarity. No turkey, no dessert. Every store in Asheville and the surrounding area had either closed or been picked clean. My sister, eager to impress a new boyfriend, ended up sobbing alone in the guest room. My mother locked herself in the bathroom. My dad sat silently, while Uncle Ron, never one to whisper, asked aloud, "Wait, wasn't Melanie in charge of the takey?" The room fell into stunned stillness. Then came the murmurs. 3 days later, a group message from my mother arrived. "We really miss you at Thanksgiving. Let's put this behind us." Not an apology, just a rug, ready to sweep everything under. I said nothing. A day after that, Aunt Carla called. Her voice was soft, like she didn't want to be overheard. "A few of us spoke to your parents," she said. "They needed to hear it." But my mother was never one to sit quietly with consequences. And, right on cue, a new version of the truth began circulating, that I'd gone off the rails, ruined Thanksgiving on purpose, that I was volatile, that this was my way of lashing out. Dad called twice before I finally picked up. "I don't know what point you were trying to make," he said, his voice tight with restrained anger. "But you humiliated your mother." I laughed, sharp and humorless. "Funny, I thought she didn't even want me there." He sighed like an actor trying to win sympathy. "We made a mistake, okay? But what you did, that was cold. Colder than uninviting your own daughter after she paid for the entire meal." My voice started to climb. "You could have said something. Anything." "You're being dramatic," he said, that old trick slipping out, like it would still work. "It wasn't even a big deal." My pulse thundered in my ears. It was to me, not a big deal. I snapped. "Then why are you calling me about it, Dad?" I ended the call, hands shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone. My body buzzed with rage and heartbreak all tangled into one. That night, my cousin Riley messaged me. "You've officially declared war." Apparently, my mother was already hard at work spinning her version, how I'd always been difficult, and this just proved it. Christmas loomed like a storm I had no intention of stepping into. At least, not until Aunt Carla called again. "She's telling everyone you're too emotionally fragile to handle the holidays," she said carefully. "That you're avoiding Christmas because you can't deal with conflict. And your dad is claiming he tried to fix things, but you're being difficult." I clenched the phone until my knuckles turned white. Oh no, they weren't rewriting my story. Christmas Eve, 2024. I arrived fashionably late, the Asheville winter biting but calm. The moment I stepped through the front door of my parents' house, the room turned to static. It was like the needle scratched across the record, every conversation abruptly halting. My mother's face stiffened. My father froze with his bourbon halfway to his lips. My sister blinked like I'd walked in from the afterlife. "Hey," I said, unwinding my scarf with a calm smile. "Merry Christmas." My mother found her voice. "Oh, you made it." "Of course," I replied, "syrup sweet. Wouldn't miss it." Then I stepped aside. Behind me stood my guest. Unexpected, uninvited, unforgiven. My grandmother. My mother's estranged mother. Her expression crumbled. The color drained from her face. Years ago, they'd had a falling out so severe my mom tried to scrub her entirely from our family's memory. But I never cut ties. When I told Grandma what happened over Thanksgiving, she'd been furious. When I asked her to join me for Christmas, she hadn't hesitated for a second. "Oh my," Grandma said as she stepped in, her voice full of mock delight. "It's been ages. My, what lovely decorations, dear." My mother looked like she might collapse. Dinner that night was as stiff and polished as porcelain. Grandma picked up her fork, examined the stuffing, and chirped. "Oh, is it store-bought? The texture is so consistent." I bit the inside of my cheek, barely containing a laugh. A week passed, and then the messages started. Cousins, second cousins, relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. "Hey, I heard something happened. Everything okay?" Others weren't as gentle. "Didn't think you had it in you to be that harsh." Aunt Carla eventually filled in the blanks. "She's telling everyone you had a meltdown," she said with a weary sigh. "That you're unstable. That what you pulled at Christmas just confirmed it." I let out a low, bitter chuckle. Not shocked, just disgusted. If there's one thing my mother's always feared, it's the truth. And if you're someone who survives by controlling the narrative, truth is dangerous, especially when it doesn't serve you. If you've ever been the outlier at the family table, the one who chose honesty over harmony, don't go anywhere. Melanie's just getting started. Subscribe to follow the story as secrets unravel and quiet resistance turns into something stronger. It hit me hard, a realization like a punch to the stomach. My mother wasn't just embarrassed. She felt threatened. I'd exposed her. So now, she was flipping the script, framing me as unstable to protect her own version of events. If she could discredit me, she wouldn't have to take responsibility. Wouldn't have to be wrong. I called Grandma. She's been making the rounds, Grandma said bluntly, telling people she's worried about you. That something's wrong. I gave a sharp, joyless laugh. You know that's not true, right? Oh, honey, she said, her tone suddenly steely. I knew it was a lie the second she opened her mouth. That night, I sat alone on the couch, the only light in the room coming from the Christmas tree. I opened the family group chat and typed a message. Hey everyone, just to clear things up, I'm doing great. No breakdowns, no drama. This season's been enlightening, but I'm honestly in a good place. Hope you are too. Happy New Year. Short, measured, impossible to twist. A digital smile and wave as the rumors started to burn out on their own. Then something unexpected happened. My phone lit up with a message from my brother Ethan. Hey, can we talk? We hadn't spoken in months. I called him instantly, heart hammering. When he answered, his voice was soft, unsure, human. Look, he began, I don't agree with how Mom handled things. I blinked. You don't? She's really good at spinning things, he admitted. Thanksgiving felt weird. But Christmas? That's when it all clicked. I stayed silent. Let him talk. I didn't say anything before, he added. You know how she gets. Yeah, I said gently. I know. A pause. I'm not saying I handled it well, but you're not crazy. Not even close. Something in my throat tightened. I hadn't realized how much I needed someone, anyone, to say that out loud until the tears hit. Something had shifted. First Carla, then Grandma, now Ethan. My mother's hold was weakening. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. I almost let it go to voicemail. But curiosity, or maybe something older, made me answer. Hello. Her voice was clipped and cold. We need to talk. In person. About what? A beat. Then, your little performance embarrassed me. There it was. Not hurt me. Not let's talk about what happened. Just embarrassed. It was always about the image. Dinner. Sunday. 6 o'clock, she said sharply. Your father and I expect you. Then she hung up. I nearly didn't go. But Aunt Carla called again. Just go, she urged. You don't have to forgive them, but let them say it to your face. So that Sunday, I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home. The moment I stepped into the dining room, the air thickened, tight and suffocating. Dad stood rigidly near the table, fingers laced too tightly. Mom sat at the head, arms crossed, expression unreadable but cold. My sister was glued to her phone, pretending not to notice. Ethan hovered at the edge of his chair, visibly uneasy. Mom exhaled, slow and sharp. Do you have any idea what you've done? I tilted my head, voice level. Which part are you mad about? The missing turkey? Grandma's surprise visit? Or the fact that people are finally questioning your version of the story? You're being ridiculous, she snapped. Dad's voice came next, low and strained. Your mother's hurt, and you've done nothing but drag her down. She didn't need help looking bad, I said calmly. She managed that just fine on her own. All I did was stop making excuses for her. Her face went red, sharp with indignation. Oh, you mean your version of what happened, she snapped. Because my version looks a little different. You abandoned us, refused to move on, and lashed out over something minor. Minor? I echoed. You didn't invite me. You let me foot the bill and then acted like I was invisible. We weren't trying to leave you out, she barked. We thought it'd be simpler that way. Less drama. And you went and turned it into chaos. No, You turned it into chaos when you started telling people I was unstable, when you tried to destroy my credibility. She slammed back, her voice rising. You humiliated me, publicly. Then, from the side of the table, Ethan spoke. Mom, he said, quietly but clearly, you did leave her out. You told people she wouldn't be coming. You let her pay for everything. He looked straight at her. That wasn't okay. She whirled toward him, anger flashing. Not you too. But Ethan didn't retreat. You cross the line every time someone calls you out. And when you're cornered, you go for blood. My dad shifted awkwardly, clearly uncomfortable. We didn't handle this the right way, he offered. My mom narrowed her eyes. What's that supposed to mean? He hesitated, then muttered, maybe she has a point. Everything went still, but I wasn't finished. It wasn't just that you didn't include me. I said, voice steady. You vilified me. You called around claiming I was falling apart. Why would you do that? There was a beat of silence before she answered, barely a whisper. I was embarrassed. Her eyes widened, like she hadn't fully grasped the truth until she said it out loud. I didn't know how to explain it to people, she continued. It got away from me. I didn't want to be the bad guy. So instead, I said, you made me the bad guy. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. For the first time, I saw something unfamiliar in my father's face, a flicker of disbelief, maybe even regret, as he looked at her like he didn't recognize the woman across from him. Ethan sat unmoving, his jaw tense, and my sister, who'd stayed quiet the whole time, finally muttered, wow. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, final. All the half-truths and manipulations were out in the open now, undeniable and raw. And in that stillness, I saw her for what she really was, not a figure of authority or strength, but a woman so terrified of being wrong that she'd rather destroy her own daughter than admit it. I stood. I'm done, I said, calm and certain. I'm not waiting for an apology that'll never come. But I need you to know this. I'm finished playing this part. She flinched, as if the words had cut. Wait! No, she barked. You don't get to walk away like this. You wrote this ending, I replied. You pushed me out. Then when people noticed, you spun the story to protect yourself. Made me into the villain so you wouldn't have to face what you did. Her mouth opened, but no words followed. I turned to my father. I appreciate that you tried, but you didn't stop it. That hurt, too. He didn't look up, just stared at his hands, tightly folded in his lap. Then I looked to my siblings. My sister swallowed hard. I should have spoken up, she whispered. Ethan gave a slow nod. Same. It didn't fix anything, but it mattered. Over the next few weeks, I created space. Real, intentional distance. My mother sent half-hearted texts. Can we just move on? I left them unread. Aunt Carla called often. Her support was steady. Grandma mailed a letter, handwritten and warm, telling me she was proud of me for standing tall. But what surprised me most came from Ethan. Mid-January, he texted, coffee? We met at a small cafe in West Asheville. Talked for 3 hours straight. I spent so much time trying to keep the peace. He said, I didn't realize how much harm it was doing. I nodded quietly. Yeah, I get that. And in that moment, for the first time, I felt it. I wasn't alone anymore. If you've ever been cast as a problem in your own family, if you've seen the dysfunction while everyone else clings to the fantasy, you know what that feels like. The ache, the second-guessing, the pain of being told you're the issue just because you set a boundary. You've heard it all before. That didn't happen. You're exaggerating. Why are you always making it about you? It's terrifying to push back on that script. But sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't forgiveness. It's refusing to play the part you were assigned. That empty seat at their Thanksgiving table, it's not a symbol of shame. It's a symbol of peace. And if you're still nodding, maybe it's time to ask yourself, which tables are feeding your soul? And which ones are starving you of the love you deserve? If you've been silenced, sidelined, or blamed for simply speaking your truth, drop a comment. I'd love to hear your story, because healing takes community. Self-respect isn't selfish, it's necessary. Choose peace. Choose honesty. Choose you. Melanie's chapter might be closing, but yours might be just beginning.